There once were four friends who were known for being thrill seekers. They loved doing dangerous things just to get a rush of adrenaline, and they were willing to risk anything to get that feeling. These four friends were up to no good again, driving around in search of some abandoned places they could explore, when they came across an abandoned asylum that was rumored to be haunted. Of course, they didn't believe in ghosts or any of that paranormal nonsense, so they decided to spend the night in the scariest place in the asylum, the padded room. Now this room was covered in scratches and dents and looked like it hadn't been cleaned in decades. And if that wasn't enough to scare them off, there were also restraints bolted to the walls and a gurney in the corner that was covered in bloodstains. But despite all of this, the friends decided to push on with their plan. So they laid down on the cold, hard floor, trying to make themselves comfortable, which was not easy considering how uneven and dirty the floor was. And while two of the friends fell asleep pretty quickly, two others couldn't stop staring at the door, imagining all of the horrible things that may happen. Then suddenly they heard a noise in the vents above them, and it sounded like something heavy was dragging itself closer and closer. Of course, they tried to convince themselves that it was nothing but their imaginations. But the noise continued to get louder and more frequent, until it was right above them, and then they saw something strange. The vent cover started to move and slowly opened up. At first, they thought it was just a trick of the light, but then a dark shape started to emerge from the shadows, and before they knew it, a ghostly figure had appeared in front of them. It was tall and thin, and wrapped in a dirty blanket that barely covered its emaciated body. The ghost looked at the friends for what felt like hours, and then let out a blood-curdling scream that echoed throughout the room. All of the friends were terrified and screamed back, hoping that would scare the ghost away. But instead of running away, the ghost got even angrier and started thrashing around the room, making the walls shake with every movement. One of the friends tried to make a run for it, but as soon as he opened the door, it slammed shut and locked itself. The ghost was now pacing back and forth and seemed to be getting stronger with every passing second. Then it stopped in front of one of the friends and raised its arms, pointing its long, bony fingers right at him. That friend tried to scream, but no sound came out of his mouth, and the ghost started to approach him. It moved with unnatural speed and was upon him in a flash. The ghost pressed its cold, dead fingers into the man's chest and pushed him onto the ground. With every fiber of his being, that man tried to push the ghost away, but it was no use. He watched in horror as the life drained out of his eyes, and his body went limp. The ghost then turned its attention to the remaining friends and repeated the process. One by one, they were all picked off until only one remained. That poor soul watched in horror as his friends were brutally murdered right in front of him. He wanted to run, but his legs felt like they were filled with lead and he couldn't seem to move. The ghost approached him slowly, savoring his fear, and pressed its cold hands against his chest. In a last-ditch effort to survive, that man bit down on his own tongue, hoping the pain would distract the ghost. But it only seemed to make the ghost angrier. It yanked him off the ground and threw him across the room. That man landed with a sickening thud and looked up at the ghost in disbelief. He couldn't believe how strong it was, and how effortlessly it had killed all of his friends. The ghost loomed over him, its face inches away from his, and let out a low growl that sent shivers down his spine. Then it did something that made no sense at all. It reached out a hand and gently stroked his cheek. That man flinched at the touch, but the ghost didn't seem to mind. Kept stroking his face and whispering something in his ear. He couldn't understand the words, but he could feel the ghost's breath on his neck, and it was sending a chill down his spine. After what felt like an eternity, the ghost finally pulled away and stepped back. It gestured to the door with a finger, and that man understood. He was being told to leave. Shaking and crying, he got to his feet and ran out of the room without looking back. He didn't want to see what else that place had in store for him. As he stumbled through the asylum, he could hear the ghost behind him, its heavy footsteps echoing in the darkness. But he didn't dare slow down or turn around. He just kept running until he found the exit. Once he was outside, he didn't stop running until he was far away from the asylum. He could still hear the ghost behind him, but it was fainter now, and he knew it couldn't hurt him anymore. When he finally stopped, he collapsed on the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. He had never been so scared in his entire life. And that's when he noticed something strange. His clothes were soaked with sweat, but his skin was ice cold. Then he looked down at his hands and saw that they were covered in scratches. He didn't remember getting hurt, but maybe the ghost had attacked him after all. Just then, he felt something brush against his leg, and he jumped in surprise. When he looked down, he saw a small black suitcase sitting on the ground. He had no idea where it came from, but something compelled him to pick it up and open it. Inside, he found a stack of old photographs and a diary. He flipped through the photos and saw images of the ghost he had encountered. It was a woman, and judging by the clothing, she must have lived during the early 20th century. Then he opened the diary and started reading. The entries were written in a shaky hand and told the story of a woman who was institutionalized against her will. As he read, he could feel the woman's pain and anguish, and he could almost hear her screams echoing in his ears. He closed the diary and put it back in the suitcase. He didn't want to know any more about the woman or her tragic fate. At that moment, he just wanted to escape the memories of that horrible place. He zipped up the suitcase and walked away without looking back. As he disappeared into the darkness, the ghost appeared behind him and reached out a hand to grab him, but it was too late. He was already gone. That man never spoke of the ghost again, buried the memory of that horrible night deep in his mind, and tried to move on with his life. But he could never escape the scars that remained. Every time he closed his eyes, he could see the ghost standing over him and hear the screams of his friends. He knew that he had survived the encounter, but he would never be the same again. So if you're ever near that abandoned asylum, don't make the mistake of going inside. The ghost is still there, and it's waiting for its next victim.